all I did over the last year was execute so fast that I was making mistakes. But as I made them, I realized I could also fix them. If you read 3 books in one industry, one niche, you are in the top 15% of intelligent people in that space immediately, because nobody reads. The fastest way to become a millionaire is to make 10 other people millionaires.
You're listening to Brainwork Framework, a business and marketing podcast brought to you by focus-biz.com.
With us today is the owner of Marketing ADD LLC, Dillon Mysliwec. He helps solopreneurs, small businesses, startups, and corporations with all things principle-based marketing, AI in business, behavioral psychology, and sales. Dillon, so excited to have you on today. How are you doing?
Doing good. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. We always like to ask our guests, tell us what we were doing before that led you into this entrepreneurial journey that you're on.
Interesting story is when I was in grammar school, I never read a full-length book. I forged signatures in the lower grades and I threw out the summer reading in 3 seconds before class. What was the Glass Castle about? First of all, what was the book? And then what was that about? So essentially, I was very good at math and science. I used to get kicked out of calculus for solving the problem before she told us the equation thing. English and social studies, I was friends with the teachers. That's how I did well. I kind of skated by in those, and then I crushed it in math and science. I ended up going to RPI. I originally went for chemical engineering, almost failed out because it was so much more hard or difficult than what I was prepared for, to the point where I found out 40 to 60% of the students take some of their courses in another school because of how difficult it is. I stuck it in that school, almost failed out, switched to mechanical engineering. And because of that, terrible GPA. And if anyone is an engineer out there, they'll know that all the engineering applications are online. They don't take anything in the mail, nothing in person. You can show up and try to do it, but they're like, submit it online. They're online systems because it's tech, you're in the STEM field, automatic. You have less than a 3.0, auto reject. Unless they have no applications coming in, which obviously they do, auto reject. So I graduated with a 2.2 and completely auto rejected. I applied to over 1,400 jobs after graduating. I was flown to several interviews because those particular ones did not ask for my GPA and everything else was impressive. So basically my biggest hurdle was this GPA. Because of that, I ended up getting whatever job I lucked out into. In this case, I applied through a recruiting company. This company ended up finding a local business that needed somebody. I get there and I still have not told them my GPA. They give me a piece of paper. I'm filling it out and oh crap. I see it, I fill it out, I get into the meeting, I'm holding onto this paper, and the guy that I meet ends up being a former RPI graduate who started in chemical engineering and did really bad and then switched to mechanical engineering and then has been working here ever since. And I was like, wow, that's crazy. We ended up hitting it off. He never asked me for the paper. In fact, I never even gave them my transcripts or my degree certificate at all, which I think they were supposed to legally, but they just liked me so much, I got right in. And ultimately, because I'm working there, I later find out they're very bureaucratic. I keep trying to move into different positions. I'm stuck. I get bored at work. I'm finishing all my work early, and I find out most other people are just lying about how long they're working for. Not everybody. There's some super hard workers there, but ultimately I'm bored at work. I'm watching YouTube because there's nothing else to do. And I get hit with an ad from Ty Lopez. Hey, I'm here in my garage, and you know what I like more than my Lamborghini and Ferrari? Knowledge. And he shows that giant bookshelf. And I ended up getting there and I'm like, look at this guy. This is kind of funny because I had not read a full-length book at that point. In fact, there was one book we read in high school that the entire book was read in class except for one chapter. And we were supposed to read it at home and I didn't read it. I have a little missing context even from that book. So I ended up chatting with a coworker of mine. I was moved around a bunch of times. I was one of the only free floaters in the company. And the person I just happened to get positioned across from, he's a very shy person, but for whatever reason, all my best friends are introverts. So I ended up chatting about, like, hey, what's up? I'm like, I just got this funny app. And he goes, I actually have a library at home. I used to read a lot. And I'd never read a full-length book in my life. He's like, have you ever tried audiobooks? And in my brain, I haven't read the books, not because I can't read, it's because I don't want to. And the reason why, I grew up when Google came out. And Google was coming out while I'm in school. And the whole time I'm thinking, I'm never going to need to read these textbooks. All of it's going to be indexed online. I will never need this. And for fantasy books, why would I read a book? Because if it's good enough, it's going to be a movie. I'll just watch the movie, save myself 10, 15, 20 hours of reading time. So to me, that paradigm was why read as opposed to what should I read? So ultimately, he suggests I check these out anyways. And he gave me 2 audiobooks he happened to have on file, which were The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People and How to Win Friends and Influence People. And I get the 7 Habits, and I'm listening to it to and from work to kill time. But also, for whatever reason, I lucked out and learned that if you your drive to work, your commute to work is the single most stressful thing in your life because of how often you have that stress, right? So it's not like someone dying, divorce, things like that. Those are very stressful, but your drive and commute to work is the single most long-lasting cumulative stress in your entire life. So the goal is to never live more than 30 minutes from work. After I got this job, I moved 10 minutes from it. It's like 10 minutes to work. That's it. And that's all I get from my audiobook. Luckily, the book was really dry. I was listening to it at 1.5 speed. And now I listen to it much faster too, but I ended up listening to it. And he talks about the entire section in the beginning of the book before he gets to the 7 habits. In this section, it talks about paradigms and principles. Principles are reality. It is how life works. It is the physical things we interact with, along with the unspoken, palpable laws of the universe. The problem is no one can see them. All we see are our paradigms, the maps we hold in front of our face of what we think reality is. And sometimes we're given information that tells us that the map is wrong. Maybe we run into a tree, and because of that, we're like, there's something here. Let me just mark that for later. And sometimes we get external information where we go, oh, that's interesting. Let me make that adjustment. And sometimes that information is so powerful that you actually adjust an entire section or maybe your entire map. And that is known as a paradigm shift. And when this happens all at once, he calls these an aha moment. And I am listening to this on my way to work, having an aha moment of, wait, this is what's in real books? My brain didn't comprehend that there was nonfiction books that were not textbooks. It just never crossed my mind. And it's funny because my dad on bookshelves, now that I'm older, I've read these books, I've looked at them. They've been there the whole time. I just never saw them. And in fact, my older brother, when he was in high school, I didn't get this experience. He had to read the 7 Habits. I just never got exposed to it. And it was the weirdest thing. So when I got hit with this, it was so overwhelming. I started listening to that book while I was at work. I then finished the next book, and I immediately ordered 4 books on Amazon, which the only place I knew to look up books. What book should I read? Tai Lopez, because that was the first person who introduced me to it. So luckily he has at tailopez.com/books. He's got a list of all the books that he recommends you read. I ended up going on there. I find a bunch of them. I dump them into Amazon and I look for which ones are on sale. And that was it. And I ended up getting Managing Oneself by Peter Drucker, which is like a 54-page book, highly recommended. Sam Walton's Made in America, the entrepreneur of all entrepreneurs, and David Ogilvy's Confessions of an Advertising Man. And the 4th book, which I've only skimmed through, ironically, even though I've had it for the longest, is Tested Advertising Methods by John Caples. That one's a bit more dry because it's literally dense. That's more like a textbook. But that Managing Oneself in there, it's not broken down into chapters. It's like sections with bold headers. And there's 2 headers that are italicized. And one of them is, how do I learn? And it basically emphasized that every person learns differently. You could learn through being lectured at, you could learn from reading, you could learn from watching, you could learn from doing it yourself, and people absorb it differently. If I remember correctly, females are better at getting lectured at in school. That's why they do better when they're younger. And then when it comes to technical things, men get better in college and then they kind of level out. But in the beginning, kids with HD are all boys. So that's kind of the idea. And once I read that, again, another aha moment of maybe I just didn't absorb it through books. And later I realized those aha moments are also a powerful neuroplastic shift. Basically, neuroplasticity, the ability for our brain to rewire itself to be more optimal for whatever tasks it must perform in order to save energy. So what happened was when my brain realized that it was doing things wrong, it rewired itself. And interestingly enough, the more that I read, I realized I couldn't remember much. But by the time I finished the 10th book, my mom had actually called me for advice because I kept sharing what was in the books. And then I had to go look it up because I'd forget. And then she called me asking for something. I'm like, I have the perfect piece of advice. And I picked up a book off the shelf and I opened it to the exact page and dropped the book. And that caught me off guard. And then I suddenly realized I could remember almost all of the core concepts from all the books I've read. I remember the authors, how to spell their weird names. I got really good memory. And what was happening was another neuroplastic shift. So from that, I kind of stumbled across the superpower that I had, which over time I developed because I realized what I had been doing. I was changing the way I can remember things. And eventually I built a really good memory. I used to have a terrible one. Like my dad and my wife both remember when they were 4. I can't remember when I was 7. I don't have any memories at 7 and young. They don't exist. I've tried to pull them up. I can look at something that existed back then. Nothing comes up. So for me, I was always worried about not remembering things. And all of a sudden I could remember. My wife will ask me the random questions sometimes. She's like, what was that number for this thing I was trying to get? And I'll remember off the top of my head. She said it one time out of context. I had no idea what she's talking about. I'm like, oh, is it this one? She's like, yeah. How do you do that? So that was kind of this journey I went on. So because of that, when I got to David Ogilvy's Confessions of an Advertising Man, I'm now realizing some of the stuff I'd been doing in the past was marketing. I just didn't realize it. When I was in college, I was in a fraternity. I ended up growing our fraternity in double in size, the largest growth in 20 years. I then ran our alumni chair and held our 75th anniversary, largest alumni that we've had probably 50 years or 25 years. I ended up creating a little logo on the shirts that we sell to alumni at the end of the year. I found out after going back years later, they still use my logo. It was crazy. I created our first Facebook page. I archived all of the old yearbooks into our Facebook account and then timelined them so that you could go to the page and scroll back to the 50s and they'll be there. It was crazy. I never realized I was doing this whole time, and marketing and selling and all this stuff. I even convinced every pizza joint in the entire city of Troy to donate pizza for a pizza tasting, which I don't think has been done since, because that was definitely a hard endeavor. And I remember I'm inside getting stuff set up. Pete's not there yet. One of our pledges comes in and they're like, hey, there's a bunch of people outside. I'm like, okay, let me go check. I go outside and there's like 200 people standing outside. I'm like, what do we do? Pizza's not here yet. Look, we had done such good marketing. The sidewalk in front of our house was filled with kids from the college. So yeah, this awakening of being able to retain memory information, being able to correlate it with other things that I learned. I started dabbling in stuff. I dabbled in graphic design and I did that back in college, and now I just got better at it. I had that same coworker who gave me those audiobooks. He was like, I got this little side hustle where I sell computer chips that I create. And can you make logos? I'm like, sure. So I went from Photoshop to learning Illustrator. I just talked with another coworker. And I'm like, I made this thing for him. He's like, well, you make logos. Can you make animated logos? Sure. I couldn't, but I learned After Effects and I made an animated logo. Then that first client, he goes, hey, I've been selling on eBay. I want to sell my own store. I figured that out. So I went and learned, and I built my own e-commerce platform from the ground up. Now, web development, graphic design, branding, I'm learning all of these things. And I basically just kept doing that. And then eventually I went to expand. I started learning through Udemy, eventually back to Ty Lopez because I wanted to get a good Facebook ad course. He just happened to have one. So I bought that, learned Facebook ads. And then I kept going from there. I started getting clients in web development and branding and graphic design. That first client, again, that coworker that gave me the books, he ended up going to a personal trainer because he had an injured back, which I kept pushing him to do. And ironically, there's a local personal trainer. He wanted to grow and market. He wanted an ebook. So I had to learn how to do InDesign and publishing. So I learned InDesign, and I literally did that through the whole Adobe Master Collection, which I slowly bought over time until I bought the whole Master Suite. And so, yeah, that's basically my journey into how I got to getting into marketing. And then essentially from there, I had one friend of mine who asked for advice because she knew I knew about marketing. Later, she left me a review on Google that perfectly explained what happened next. Said, which I didn't know this until I saw the review. She's like, my mom and I have hired 3 marketing consultants over the last X amount of time, and none of them were even close to what Dillon suggested. And I helped them during COVID and get through and marketing all that. It was just super cool because she's the one that after that happened, she only asked me about one thing, let's say Facebook ads. And I went through a whole bunch of other stuff. And she's like, have you ever thought about consulting? And I'm like, no. And then about 2 months later, I got my first consulting client where I basically developed their entire marketing strategy down to the point of which state to open their LLC in, everything. And this is pre-ChatGPT. So this is me just with way too much random knowledge in business and marketing. It was cool. I got paid, I want to say it was like $2,000. I selected their domain name, got their social media handles together, built their website, created a brand guide, built their logo, built all the designs and graphics for their social platforms, got their personalized email set up, came up with a marketing strategy, created a lead magnet, created all the pop-ups and all this email marketing campaign, helped them with their LLC. And I did all that in 3 days. And they were like, holy crap. This was the fastest, a large amount of money I ever got at that point. And it was just because I could do all of it. So now I guess, so that's how I got to where I am. Basically from there, after I got into consulting and I realized I could consult and also provide the services, I was like, okay, I can't do both long-term. So I need to figure out how to outsource. So I ended up revisiting the 4-Hour Work Week and another great book that's actually pretty new now, Buy Back Your Time by Dan Martell. Then my favorite business book of all time, which is The E-Myth Revisited by Michael Gerber. With those books in mind, I've been slowly trying to create systems within my company, outsource delivery of services, and figure out how to like slowly build upon the company so that it can function without me. It's slow and steady, but one of those things where I know that as long as I keep moving in that direction, it's inevitable. It's something that will ultimately happen as long as I don't stop.
Right, absolutely. And over time, you're actually getting to that next stage. You don't need to build the processes and systems and outsourcing until you get to that point. You want to be focused on the fulfillment, just handling it all as a solopreneur until you get to that next logical point. But one thing that your journey really highlights is one, there's always be learning mindset, even though you weren't into that type of learning. And two, learning what type of learning best suits you. Just as you said, some people are visual learners. Some people want to read it. Some people want to see it be done and then do it themselves. So it's about working with what skill set that you have. But then you just said yes to almost any project that came through, whether you knew the system or not, you knew I can figure this out. And if someone's willing to pay you to figure it out, hey, you have a business going on. You're solving problems here. So kudos to you for putting your mind to work and just taking in as much information as you can to help other people.
Yeah, I would definitely say it was the growth mindset, this idea that you could learn something, which I learned pretty early on, I think. So it's a little bit of a tangent, but essentially when I was in college, I mentioned almost failed out of college. And the only reason I didn't was at one point, I'm like, okay, I am about to fail out. It's getting to the end of the semester. I'm crushing it in one class, but this other class I'm getting destroyed in. And I did the math and I need 100 on this test or I will fail out because that one grade would lower me enough that I would get bumped from the school because it was the lowest grade and I probably would fail the class without that 100. So before all that, I ended up speaking with the campus psychologist, psychiatrist, who told me to speak to a psychologist first. So I went and saw a psychologist. About 10 minutes into that call, he's like, have you ever, or conversation, I was there in person. 10 minutes into that conversation, he's like, have you ever been tested for you? My dad said he did it, but I don't think he did it. Because I don't remember that. And he goes, yeah, I'm going to write you up something. So he wrote me up a note to see the psychiatrist. I go back to the psychiatrist. And he'd had me take this test. There's a bunch of cognitive abilities, but the only thing I remember was it was this clean, smooth line and then was completely jutting off, completely non-existent. He ultimately ended up prescribing me Concerta, and then he upped the dosage 3 times until I was a zombie mode focus machine. I don't take that stuff anymore, but basically I took that stuff and I was like super hyper focused, and that helped me study and retain and be able to read something boring and get through it. But I was so far behind in that class, that wouldn't be enough. So ultimately what happened was I need to go through all the material that we've done all year long and I have to learn it. I ended up staying up for 7 straight days without sleep, without stopping except to eat. And all I ate was Subway sandwiches, chips, and soda or Monster. I found out if you do that for 10 days, your brain can just turn off and you're dead. I was lucked out there. But the reason I got through that was I came across Eric Thomas's The Hip Hop Preacher, his first video that made him famous. Some kid recorded him without his permission, made it into a video and released it. And it says his famous quote that's on shirts and stuff now, which is, when you want to succeed as bad as you want to breathe, then you'll be successful. And ultimately I ended up listening to that on repeat for the 7 straight days. While Subway sandwiches, Doritos, and Monster were keeping me alive with Concerta over and over again. And so I ended up taking that test and I got a 93 on it. So I lucked out and I did pass that class. I almost failed another class, ironically, and the teacher came up to me after. I had an A all semester and I bombed the final. And he asked me, what the hell happened? And I told him the story. I was going to fail out of school if I didn't ace this other class. So I did nothing but study for that for a week straight without sleep. And the guy's like, that makes a lot more sense. And I'm like, sorry, I let you down, but it was sitting in the back of my head after I got exposed to reading. I could do absolutely anything I set my mind to. And later I stumbled across Tom Bilyeu, the founder of Impact Theory and Quest Nutrition. And he has this 25 beliefs of impactivists. And I love it because I think it's like belief number 5, anything you believe you can do, you can do. And then belief number 7 is number 5 is a lie, but it's an empowering lie. And we believe only that which moves us closer to our goal. That's a meta stuff there. Even though it's not technically true, as long as I believe I can accomplish whatever I can, I will move past all of the things that are seemingly impossible that really aren't. So that's kind of what set that mindset from the beginning. So once I realized what was in books and I think I can accomplish anything I put my mind to, I started buying books like crazy. I got a bookshelf over here filled with probably 100+ books. This is my home office. My office has over 1,000 books, 6 of them may be fictional. The rest are all nonfiction. It was physiology, psychology, philosophy, what's it called? Personal finance, personal self-development, business, leadership, coaching, sales, copywriting, web development, sales funnels. I'm bushcrafting. You know what I mean? It's how to survive in the wilderness. So I just started absorbing whatever I could, knowing that I could use some of it somewhere at some point in time. And I was just eating that stuff up.
That belief in ourselves is incredibly powerful. Even when you got to number 7 and realized, okay, it was a lie. It is true. When you believe in yourself and push yourself beyond those limits, you have to get comfortable with being uncomfortable. When you feel uncomfortable, that means you're evolving, you're growing, you're changing. So people need to get more comfortable with that feeling and to be thirsty for knowledge. I think this is what really keeps people on top of their game and just continue to push forward. This obviously is rooted in a passion both for the learning and just for the specific topics that you're covering. But if I could have just a little bit of extra knowledge that might help myself or someone else, I want to know that knowledge.
Yeah, well, the coolest thing I remember hearing about that, I was listening to a podcast that was like, imagine you're in the woods and you cut your leg and you've never heard the word tourniquet. You could die for something as most people know what that is. They've seen television, they've seen what a tourniquet is. They have a general understanding of how to make one. But imagine you just never heard the word. How crazy it is. That one snippet of information could save your life or a loved one's life, and you just didn't know it. So to me, it should be your duty to become the best version of yourself if you care about those around you, because the 7 habits, first you must become independently successful so that you can provide the success to others complementary. Understanding that if you're not the best version of yourself, then you can't give the best version of yourself to others. The blue zones, people that live to 100+ years old in a mass collection, they did studies on this, and some of them eat fat, drink wine. There's a lady who's 114 or something that drinks 3 cans of Dr. Pepper a day, right? So it clearly isn't those things. Now, those things might improve quality of life, but longevity itself is solely tied to your social connections. That's the reason why 5 years after you retire is the average age of death. You have lost all purpose and your connections are dwindling. Your kids have moved on, they have their family, and now your coworkers are no longer there. And there's that guy they interviewed in that documentary. He's 104. Why are you still chopping wood? Why don't you get someone younger to do that? Is it, what do you mean? I chop the wood. That's his purpose. That's a big deal of understanding that if we live for others, then the best way to live for others is to become the best version of yourself and then offer that to them.
Absolutely. Now, Dillon, where can more people find out about you and get connected with you online?
It's mostly there, but I have a website that is just my name, dillonmysliwiec.com. And there is where you will find all of my business ventures. I have a marketing company, Marketing ADD, which you could go to artdevdesign.com to find. Longer story on the naming of that. If you couldn't tell, the ADD is a little joke. I have Sierra Nova Comics, where me and a business partner publish our own comics, and now we're looking to become a comic book publisher for others. There is the Upstate Sound, which is a music business and a collection of music businesses, including a record label, publishing company, artist management, live events, and recording studios here in Nashville. But all of those are easily found from the dillonmysliwiec.com under business ventures. I have something on there to contact me. But either way, all my personal stuff's on there as well. Instagram, you can find it on there. I answer that.
Perfect. And we will have those links available down in the show notes and the description so everyone can get connected here. Now, Dillon, if you had to start over again, start from zero and rebuild yourself back to where you are today, what would be the game plan that you would set for yourself?
The thing I started doing differently last year that pivoted everything I was doing was I started looking across all of my favorite entrepreneurs, and I figured out that there is only one thing. I think Hormozy has something on this where there's 3 things that everybody has, but I figured out there's actually only one thing, and it is how much they execute on what they know. And for me, I spent a lot of time reading. I have read an immense amount of books. I've taken thousands of hours of online courses. I've gone to seminars and conferences and networked with people online. But the one difference was I noticed every time I over executed, something positive came from it. And all of those things always ended up in more money, more knowledge, faster. And so all I did over the last year was execute so fast that I was making mistakes. But as I made them, I realized I could also fix them. And my biggest worry before was getting a client that I couldn't properly serve and making a mistake. And it's like, don't do it to the point where you're going to hurt your lifelong reputation. Don't charge somebody 20 grand a month and then show up and be like, I don't know anything. I don't know what I'm doing. I paid a bunch of people and they don't know what they're doing because I don't know how to hire people. Don't do that. If here's all the available knowledge in a space and here's where you are and here's where your client is, you can help them. Like I've had people ask me for life advice only because I'm this much further ahead than they are. And that was enough for them. And I think that that's the biggest thing. You don't need to be the best. Just realize you can help the person who didn't read the book you read. That's it. If you read 3 books in one industry, one niche, you are in the top 15% of intelligent people in that space immediately because nobody reads. There's that whole thing where every CEO reads 60 books a year. Well, that means that there's thousands of people that read 0 books a year because the average is 1 book a year, right? So like, that's crazy. For every CEO reading 60, there's 59 people that didn't read anything this year. So that is a huge percentage of people that don't read anything. And because of that, you could read 1 book. I know that the execution's the one piece of advice I would give is that you could read that 1 book and find some guy already making money, but that one piece of knowledge they didn't have yet. And then you give it to them. Now they make more money. Now they might make more money than you. In fact, every one of my clients now make more money than me, except for maybe 1. But ironically, a few of them were not before I met them. And now they make more, right? So I gave them that piece. And what was that thing? The fastest way to become a millionaire is to make 10 other people millionaires. So that's what I'm working on. I have a couple that are approaching that type of speed. They're getting there pretty quick. And all of a sudden, my income started going up with that. So execute, read a book, execute, take a course, execute, try to do it before you're ready. Just do it. And then that it.
Absolutely. I totally agree. There's no shortage of great ideas out there, but what there is a shortage of, the great execution. Even an expert or really know what you're doing, just dive into it. Be okay with making mistakes, and you can learn along the way. I feel like there's more that I've learned from hands-on experience versus a lot of the schooling. That's great, but until you actually implement everything you've learned, it's just self-help and not self-help.
Yeah. I guess the one piece of advice on how to execute mentally is that the coolest thing that happened was after I read a lot of Stoic philosophy, my mom had noticed that I was much more calm during the holidays. There was one holiday in particular, all my siblings are fighting and I'm not. And normally I'm that argumentative, I'm right, you're wrong, like let's fight about it. And I'm very calm. So we're going to my grandmother's house. We're up the stairs. All the siblings have come in and my mom kind of stopped me and just asked me, how do you do that? Do what? She's like, not give a shit. And I'm like, we all die. That was it. I walked inside. You're worried about executing and making a mistake. You're going to be dead one day. It could be tomorrow. A bus could take you out. You're going to be, I don't know if I was ready yet. At least I went for it. The My Way with Frank Sinatra. I love that song. It's like, I don't care that I made a mistake. I did it my way. I got to where I wanted to be. I tried to do it. If I messed up, that's way better than never having tried and never knowing.
That's what I'm saying. Absolutely. I totally agree. Dillon, I'm sorry. We only have 1 more minute. If there's anything else that we haven't touched on yet that you wanted to share, feel free to take the floor.
Let's see. I might say that although that execution is a really big deal, I still would make sure you read, make sure you do something to further educate, find a mentor. Tai Lopez pushes a lot. I had no idea how to go about it. Network, learn, become better, execute, and then go to networking again. And eventually what's going to happen is you're going to reach a level that someone above you is going to say, there's somebody I could do something with. And the fun thing that nobody realizes is that people who are experts love to be like, let me teach you, young Padawan. They love to be able to be the guy who knows everything that it is that you want to know. And by being receptive to that, you will finally find that person who is like, I would love to help you. And I ultimately ended up getting a few mentors over the last couple of years for that exact reason. I had already spent way too much time reading books and taking courses. I am way more than ready. And then I just put myself into enough situations where suddenly someone's like, let's talk some more. And they're way past where I'm at. And let me say, I want to talk. So become better by reading, executing, reading, executing, network, reading, executing, and just do those three things over and over again. And eventually you're going to run into that person. They might become a client. They may become a mentor. They might become a friend and a trusted advisor you could work with. Be worth a damn and then go meet people.
I love that. That's beautiful. I would absolutely love to see the mind map of doing the network, execute, read, and put that into a funnel here to see how that would look. But I think the end result speaks for itself. Love the tips and tricks here. Dillon, appreciate you taking the time and sharing your wisdom with us. Thank you.
Definitely. Thanks for having me.
Of course.